Hello and welcome to this class. Today I want to talk about full stack development. If you are planning to start your career as a full stack developer, this class is for you. With this diagram, I'm going to explain to you the technologies that you need to know as a full stack developer. I'm going to take it one step at a time, and at the end, you should be able to know how everything connects together. So if you want to be a full stack developer, the first thing is to choose your technology stacks. One, we need front-end technology. We need back-end technology. We need also a database. And as a developer, you are also expected to work with a version control system. In this case, we'll be talking about GitHub. Git and GitHub as our version control system. So with this, you ensure that you have a good workflow and you have chosen the right technologies to achieve your goal. Looking back on this diagram, here we have our front-end technology. In this case, we have chosen React.js as our example front-end technology, but you can also use AngularJS. You can also use Vue.js or any other front-end technology of your choice. Now, when you are done with learning the stacks in front-end, you now move to back-end technology, where you build your back-end logics and APIs. In this example, we have chosen to use Spring Boot as our back-end technology, but you can also use Django as your backend, or you can also choose to use PHP as your favorite backend technology. And this backend works with a database. Definitely, you need to connect your backend logic to database. In this case, we have chosen Microsoft SQL Server as our example database, but you can use what we call MySQL database. You can also use what we call Postgres SQL as your database of your choice. Now, the front-end technology, they can only communicate with the back-end using what we call REST API. It is API that communicate with other applications to perform some functions. Example, when a user performs HTTP requests, they can now be able to fetch data from database and display the result on the user interface that you have built with your front-end technologies. Now, when you are done with your front end, your back end, and your database, and we should not forget that as a developer, like I said, you need to know a version control system, which is, in this case, we have chosen GitHub. GitHub helps you to manage your code, the versions of your code, and it helps you to work with other developers to be able to share your code or your source code online. Okay, with GitHub, you can develop what we call a workflow. That is your CI/CD, which means continuous integration and continuous delivery and deployment. It helps you to automate workflow to make your work easier without having much human interaction. So in GitHub, we have a technology called GitHub Actions. With GitHub Actions, we can curate a workflow by writing a script either in YAML file that will perform some actions or some operations when something happens on our repository. For instance, if you make a push request, it will trigger some operations like building and testing our code, of which it will fetch, check out the code from repository, build and test it. If everything works, it will check the code quality. If everything is fine, it will now build what we call a Docker image. Building a Docker image helps us to get a consistent application that will run very fine irrespective of the operating system. Now that we have built a Docker image, it will automatically deploy to a cloud platform. In this case, we have chosen AWS. AWS stands for Amazon Web services. Here, there are different technologies that will help us to host our application. One of them is EC2, Amazon EC2. It means Elastic Cloud Compute, where you can host your application. We also have what we call S3, Simple Storage Service, where you can host your files, your static files, logs, and images, and they all work with Amazon CloudFront. With this, when you have successfully hosted your application on a cloud platform, it is now time for you to monitor your application and see what is happening behind the scene. In this case, you have to choose a technology we call Grafana. Grafana will help you to design a dashboard, and this dashboard will help you to visualize what is happening in your application. For instance, you can monitor what we call CPU. You can monitor your CPU. We can monitor the system health. We can also monitor user activities on our application. And this is possible with Grafana, which helps you to design a dashboard. Not only that, the next thing is to measure some metric collections. And the technology that will help you to achieve this is Prometheus. Prometheus helps you to measure metrics like database metrics, infrastructure metrics, and any other metrics that you want to measure in your application. With Prometheus, you should be able to target a particular metrics and see what exactly is happening in your application. Now, the next thing is to have your logs. You need to get your log files, log data, what is happening in the application. Is there any error log, any error message that is happening? And this technology called Loki will help you to track the log of your application, like database logs, access logs, or system logs from your cloud platform. So with Loki, you should be able to monitor all the logs in your application. So once you are done with front-end technology, you have done with back-end logics, you have connected them to a database, and you have created your workflow and pipeline on your GitHub using GitHub Actions. You have deployed on Amazon AWS or any other cloud platform, and you have created a dashboard to monitor your application. It means that you can actually work with developers in a new software engineering environment in 2026. So I hope this tutorial gives you a clear understanding of what is expected from a full stack developer. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we hope to bring more tutorials like this.